Welcome to our first episode of Finding Your Balance, a mental health podcast. My name is Tiffany. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm also the Director of Children's Services at Peace River Center, a community mental health agency located in Polk County. I'm joined here by my co-host, Kirk, who is a licensed clinical social worker, as well as Director of the Crisis Response Services at Peace River Center. Hi, Kirk.
Hello. How are you, Tiffany?
I'm good. So today, as we're getting ready for the fall semester that has just started for most schools, there's a lot of transition in the air. And I think when we talk about mental health, transition is a big stressor that can affect mental health in a big way, right?
Big anxiety during this time because you're breaking out into something new. Most people are breaking away from their families for the first time and making long trips, like even going out of state. And so, yes, very much a brand new adventure for everyone.
I think a lot of times when we talk about mental health, right now especially, it's one of those buzzwords. Everyone's talking about mental health. They're talking about trauma. And when you think about finding your balance, it's important to know, what even do those words mean?
Absolutely.
Right? And when you think about mental health, everyone has it, just like everyone has physical health. And sometimes, just like with physical health, you can become unwell. Right,
exactly. Especially if you're not paying attention to doing things that help you to reduce your anxiety, reduce your stress. If you're not finding those support mechanisms, the coping mechanisms that help you find your balance, it can lead to more serious things.
I'm thinking especially, I know sometimes we think especially about students during this time, but in every big life transition, whether it be a new relationship, a new job, anytime there's a big change, it can be really hard to find your balance when you have that reset. And so especially I think about, when you start somewhere fresh and you had a support system, but now that support system changes, or you had a schedule and a routine, and now, it's completely different. How do you regain that balance when there has been a big shift? And so a lot of times people, they think about the big ones like sleep, like nutrition. And those are big helps, but there's so much more we can do.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that people understand, even when they're breaking off into something new, that create a routine around it, because that reduces anxiety. So the more you practice at it, the more you make it part of your regular routine. Even if there's something in the routine you want to change, you want to introduce it and practice it several times over. In order for something to become habitual in somebody's life, you have to do it at least 21 times in order for it to really set in. So, yeah, routine is important. And when you're adding new things, make it part of the routine.
Well, when you look at routines, I think sometimes, there's so many things that we can do on our own, definitely. But there's some things that you can't replace that connection, that relationship with other people when you're starting new, maybe at a new job or at a new school. Sometimes that doesn't happen automatically. And learning how do you cultivate friendships, how do you find that connection, it can be really hard.
It is. It is. And, a lot of schools have opportunities for meet and greets, especially with freshmen. Getting to know who's available on campus, getting to know fellow freshmen, and you start off. Some people think it's kind of silly, but it's an important piece because you need that social support system. It may not be the permanent social network that you have at the beginning, but it's a start and helps people to really start to take control of their life at that point. And especially if it's a new situation where you are breaking away from mom and dad and trying to break out on your own, to really start to figure out, okay, who do I want to hang out with? Who do I want to be with? Who's going to be that person? And again, you're testing the waters the first few times.
And I think sometimes whenever we start new things, it's like this idea of well, who am I? Who do I want to be? Because that can change over time. Going from adolescence to early adulthood, there's a lot of changes that take place. And part of the college experience, part of the young adult experience is kind of rediscovering who you are, figuring out for the first time. And the scary part sometimes for those big transitions is when your support system does change, you got to ask yourself, am I okay? And if I'm not okay, is there anybody who's going to notice that I'm not okay? And when I think about that question, am I okay? There's so much to unpack there because what I need to be okay changes over the course of, my life, and especially early adulthood. What do I need? I need that balance. Like you said, I need the
Right.
sleep. I need the nutrition, but I also need to kind of be honest with who I am. And part of that
True.
means, setting boundaries, figuring out what my coping skills are. And coping skills, I feel like it's such a simple thing, but it can be a really hard thing because it's something that you have to intentionally implement. And coping skills is another buzzword. Like, what does that even mean?
Right, exactly. And I think you said something very important. It's the intentionality that goes with it, the mindfulness of doing something and saying, I'm doing this with purpose. I'm doing this for a particular reason. That is pretty important in a way of, taking control of who I am, who I'm going to be. Now, not everybody's going to do it perfectly. Most people don't do it perfectly. They make mistakes. That's how we learn. We make mistakes. It's not necessarily what you see on TikTok or YouTube. That's that first, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. Well, what about all that practice that person had to get to that point? Because you're only seeing the best of the situation. You're not seeing the trips, the falls, the stumbles that took place beforehand. You're only seeing that perfect moment. And that doesn't mean everybody does it perfectly the first time. It takes practice. And the way to practice is to get out there and put yourself out there to do these things, interact with fellow students who are going through the same experience you are.
And what you just said so resonates with me because so many times what we broadcast to other people and what we see from other people is the highlight reel. We see the best of the situation. How many selfies did you take, to get the perfect one to post? And we forget a lot of people feel the way we feel when we're in those moments, when you're feeling lonely or when you're feeling insecure or when you're feeling, man, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
Like an imposter. A lot of people feel that way, but we're afraid to say it out loud. And I think there's such power in connection and power in community. So one of the best ways to find your balance is to be honest with your need for connection with other people.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of resources at schools. There's the student body counseling that's available. There are other professors that are out there. Your advisor, if you've got an advisor at the school, get to know them. Get to talk with them a little bit. Again, you have control here. That's the other thing. A lot of people feel it's totally out of their control. It's not totally out of your control. You have some control around that. And we get anxious about stuff that we don't have control over. Those things you need to, okay, how do I adjust, adapt, be flexible? But those things we do have control over, we forget that we have some control here. And that includes our social encounters and how we go about that and who we reach out to. And I think, too, I said earlier that people are going to struggle. They're going to fall down every once in a while and make mistakes, and that you learn from those mistakes. That's a normal part of growing and developing, learning new stuff. I mean, myself, I'm still learning some new stuff. I get out there and learn some new stuff every once in a while. It's not always going to be perfect, but you practice at it, you study it, you talk with other people who might be going through a similar experience or who have some information from their previous encounters with that to help kind of guide what you're going to do. So it's good to reach out to people. Even as part of the normal development, whatever normal is. But, I think, too, it's important to understand that when it feels awkward, when it just doesn't feel right, don't isolate, don't hide yourself from the fact that, hey, I might need to talk to somebody, anybody, about this particular issue. And you want to make sure it's somebody you trust and you feel safe with.
And I think that's the value of a support system, of people who know you. And when you think about, well, how do I find my balance whenever things are not balanced, whenever things are teetering to, the unhealthy side? Because mental health is not a constant, right?
Right.
It evolves and it changes depending on how you're feeling and the day and the environment. And there's things that you can do to safeguard that. But sometimes you do all the things that you know, and it can still be a struggle. So having that support system of the people who know you, the people you trust, who can jump on that scale and can tilt that balance to a healthier side, that can be everything. And so, but part of it starts with making sure you have people who know you, who can either notice or sense that you're not okay, or who you can reach out to and say, hey, I need to talk. I need someone on my side right now. And that can really make a world of difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, there are different types of people. There are those that are more extroverted and are out there and like to be kind of in the spotlight and social and interact quite a bit. And then you have folks who are more introverted who, yes, they do some of the social thing, but that takes a lot of energy for them. And so they need those quiet times. And again, it's knowing yourself, finding the balance for yourself. And the way you do that is